Welcome to the Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Judy Morgan, your host for Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. My guest today is a brilliant veterinarian, Dr. Barrie Sands, coming to us from San Diego, I believe. Dr. Barrie Sands is an emergency critical care, integrative, functional medicine veterinarian. Another one of these people who just, had to get like 27 different degrees and certifications. Do you ever stop learning, Barrie?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's a good thing. She uses a wide variety of healing modalities, from conventional allopathic methods to esoteric forms of energy healing, with a degree as a master practitioner of shamanic energy medicine. And I can tell you that if you ever get the opportunity to be in the same room as Dr. Barrie Sands, you will feel that energy. She is just a very inviting, happy aura person, and makes you feel very welcome in her space. She is a certified trainer for the Institute of Heart Math, teaching stress management, emotional self-regulation, resilience building, and coherence techniques, and is a pioneer researcher of interspecies coherence and biofield physiology entanglement. That's a lot of big words, but I think we're going to break it down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is really cool. How did you get started in this whole shamanic energy? Like what was that defining moment where you said, "Aha, there's something here"?
Well, honestly, I feel like that it was when I was young. I was, as a child, I was always tapped into these unseen sort of in between energy fields of existence, through experiences in dream time and clairaudience and clairsentience and all these sort of extrasensory perceptions. And as I grew up and learned about the world that I live in, it kind of led me on this path of wanting to heal, to be a healer of all life, right? I think someone naturally to do that. Veterinary medicine was more of not so much an afterthought, but a stepping stone, into that sort of realm of how I can, do that in this world. So becoming a veterinarian, being trained in that conventional way, taught me what we were taught in the conventional schools of how to heal. But yet knowing in the back end of that, there is this whole other world that we never really address. And I was going through my conventional trainings and then decided to be certified in, holistic medicine and acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, and really embracing those more philosophical, metaphorical healing modalities, as we tap into energy, because those kind of treatments like Chinese medicine is all about energy and movement of energy, and then,
Absolutely.
right, learning about that and then going into like the pure essence of energy healing is truly in the quantum realm. And that's where science and spirituality blends. And that's where the ancient mystic traditions are now, being talked about in a more scientific way, which is cool and fascinating that we're even alive now to even, embrace that.
Yeah, I've got a friend who is very much into the quantum physics as it intersects with spirituality and talking to our ancestors, and just really, really interesting information. And I can't wait to see what it looks like in 100 years. Not that I'll be looking at it from here, but I can't wait to see what it looks like, because I think we'll know a lot more.
Yeah. That honestly, I feel like within the next 5-10 years, there's going to be an explosion of that kind of understanding in an applicable way.
That's what my friend says as well. She said it's really exploding.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. Now, you work in emergency and critical care. I worked emergency for 10 years. It is very high stress. It is very high pace. There's a lot of emotion because a lot of times you are dealing with pet owners that you don't know because you're not their everyday veterinarian. You're dealing with animals that might be in crisis. You're dealing with family members who are in crisis because their pet's in crisis. How does this energy medicine and, shamanic teachings, heart math, how does all of that play into that? Do you find that that keeps you more centered and helps you keep everybody calm in that situation?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And at least for me, it is important in that realm of chaos that I'm centered and I'm focused and I'm grounded because I'm interfacing with all that's not. However, it's important that when you have a team of people in the ER, like all the other doctors, the nurses, the group, the receptionists, all the other people, if they're not in a coherent, sort of grounded way, then it's still, there's this inner chaos that happens.
Yeah,
So there's definitely,
absolutely.
you're like the only one. Because if you're the only one that's in this grounded state, it's like a light bulb in a darkness. Because if you have to be super, super strong and bright to illuminate all of that that's around you. And we have levels, and I have levels of my ability to be resilient and coherent. And sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I don't have the energy, sometimes I'm a little dehydrated, and I'm not on my game as much as I am. So there's definitely little challenges around that. But just on a one-on-one situation with a client, that's much easier, because I could go in my grounded, sort of very coherent state, and then help the client come to that as well. And that's
Yeah.
very effective.
Yeah, it's really interesting because once I learned acupuncture and started doing that, and then I did chiropractic and some massage basics, and a lot of different energy healing goes into that. I mean, really, acupuncture is all about energy, and it is so true. There, I owned two clinics for a lot of years, and when you have a really cohesive team, it's like, all right, it doesn't matter how crazy it is. Everybody's doing their thing, getting it done, and the crazy doesn't lead to chaos. Other times you have a team where it could just be one person who's really just out of sync, or you can have a whole team. And I did relief work for a lot of years as well. And sometimes you walk into just those toxic environments where you can just feel everybody's energy is just not good. And I think, and we're going to talk about this more, I think it has such an effect on our patients. So on the days when my energy was just awful because something else was a problem, whether it's a family thing or a financial thing or whatever, it's like my acupuncture didn't work nearly as well on those days, and I didn't connect with the animals and I didn't connect with the people. And on the days when my energy was just right there and really centered, it's like, oh, look at that, everything's going great, everybody's happy, everybody's walking out of here happy. And so I think, and this is, we want to talk about this a lot more, but I think that we all need to be really self-aware of the bubble that surround, like I said, your bubble is very positive, light, happy energy. And when our bubble is emanating you walk into the room and it's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Why is everybody angry? You can feel it in the air. So is that energy that we're feeling?
Yeah, you're so right. And I think, before I answer that question, so yes, that is that. And, I feel like in order for a team of people or a collective to really be coherent as a group, everybody needs to understand truly and be open to what energy is, right? And what it actually means. And when we start learning about what it is and understanding its role in our lives, our role in its life, then we have a deeper fundamental picture of our reasons of why we're here in the first place. And it allows us to have a different consciousness and awareness of how we show up and what we do. Energy is it's the fundamental substrate of the universe, right? Everything is energy. And there's this fundamental field, which is the source of all creation. And that's when we talk about, in the quantum sense of it. And I think our deeper understanding of it and our openness to understand it is actually going to be the pivotal point of allowing that to affect our lives and how we show up, right? Does that make sense? And
yeah.
And so, in understanding we all say, oh, we're all one, we're all one, but what does that really mean, and how do you connect with that? And it's definitely a true statement. And when we talk about energy, there's all sorts of types of energy, right? Energy is this, the definition is this capacity to do work or create change, right? It's a force of nature. And it's found in many different forms. We have kinetic energy and potential energy from electricity, electromagnetic fields, heat, light, sound, like everything is a thing, right? And when we use energy medicine, the word energy medicine is type of an alternative medicine where we're using these subtle energy fields to affect the healing. So when you're, saying you and everything is online and everybody's coherent, and then you start to do the needling and the acupuncture, and it magic happens, versus where you have all this discourse and dysfunctional disarray of other energies, it doesn't really work as well. And that's because there's all of this other information that is being put into the field that's creating the chaos. Right? So I think ultimate understanding is really about coherence in the system.
So we're gonna take a break to hear from our sponsors, but I do want to talk more about coherence, and I think this is where the HeartMath Institute information comes in, if I'm not mistaken. So everyone stay tuned. We'll learn more about that when we come back in just a minute. Holistic pet care begins in the gut, where the microbiome supports digestion, immunity, and overall well-being. But there's another vital microbiome we often overlook: the skin. The skin's natural bacteria form the first line of defense, shielding the body from external threats. That's why at Mr. Suzuki's Pet Care, they treat bath time as skin care, not just a wash, but a wellness ritual. Their signature deep pre-treatment delivers deep hydration before bathing, helping to protect and restore the skin barrier. And their foam-free Saki shampoo gently cleanses without disrupting the skin's delicate balance. The goal of Mr. Suzuki's Pet Care is comfort in the moment, prevention over time, a healthier, longer life by your side. Use code DrJudy25 for 20% off when ordering at MrSuzuki'sPetCare.com. Mr. Suzuki's Pet Care, because every pet deserves to feel good in their skin. To all of the pet parents listening, traditional Chinese veterinary medicine theory revolves around the 5 elements known as fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. Each element is associated with specific organ systems and a specific personality or constitution. And each constitution can be predisposed to medical issues based on the organs associated with the personality. Take your free human personality quiz. Yes, a quiz for you on naturallyhealthypets.com. Search for the human personality quiz and determine your TCVM personality today. Welcome back. You're listening to the Naturally Healthy Pets podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Judy Morgan. My guest today, Dr. Barrie Sands, is kind of an expert in energy medicine. And so we were talking about cohesiveness, and I want to learn more about HeartMath and how all of this affects our pets, not just from a veterinarian patient standpoint, but also from a pet parent sibling, whatever. We live with our pets day in and day out, and I have a feeling that our energy really impacts their energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our energies are so entangled with our fields, right? We all know we emit these fields of energy. We can feel it. It's palpable. When you get that sort of sense when you're interfacing, like we were saying, with like bad vibes and good vibes, you could feel that. And on a real level, we interact with our animals and each other. And we have an effect on our physiology, on their physiology. And when there's a terminology called coherence, where all that means is that there's an energetic alignment of all things, where everything is working together in its highest capacity to function in the most perfect way, if that makes any sense. And
sure,
the universe as a source of energy strives to create that coherence. It's all it's doing is creating this fundamental organization of itself to create the perfection of itself, right? So that's the default. The default is perfection and working, where everything works together, right, in harmony. That's the default mechanism. So when we understand that, it makes it easier for us to say, okay, well, if that's the case, and the universe and energy is striving for its ultimate coherent nature, then all I have to do as a biological being in that field is to match it, right? Is to be coherent with it. It's like being on the phone. You have to be in the same energy frequency to resonate and to connect, right? Because if you're not, then you're not going to be able to, get the communication. I was thinking about this morning. It's kind of like trying to use your microwave as a radio. No matter how many buttons you're going to push or how many numbers, it's not going to hit the same frequency as the 100.2, FM, where you can hear the music. You can hit 100.2 on your microwave, and it's not going to give you sound, right? So why? It's because it's a completely different frequency. So when we match the frequency of the healing mechanisms with ourselves and our animals, then healing is going to happen.
And is it possible for people to learn how to match those frequencies? Like, is this obviously we're I think innately, like you said, the universe wants that coherence and that cohesiveness, but I think a lot of things interfere with that. As humans, our emotions certainly, I think, would interfere with that. But I think there's probably a lot of external sources, for instance, microwaves or electromagnetic fields, that I would think those also interfere with that coherence.
Sure. I mean, those are right. All those external frequencies that are coming in, like the 4G, 5Gs, and all the 10Gs and all that stuff, it's definitely detrimental to physiology, because we're those energetic beings. However, I always like to think about, so what is it that can I do? What can I do personally in my life? And what do I have control over? And like you mentioned, emotions are the biggest thing that we can use to control the way we're putting out the energy and the coherent nature of it. Because when we want the body to go into a state of coherence, what we're actually doing is creating a very clear communication between the frequencies of the heart and the frequencies of your brain. And it's getting that in a unified, harmonic conversation. And the techniques are super simple, right? Because nature herself is complex, but there's a simplicity in the complexity of that. So the solution's always simple. And, I'll just say it, it's breathing and emitting the emotions of love, those higher frequency emotions of love and care, gratitude, awe, those kind of emotions have higher frequencies, than those really low emotions, or negative emotions of anger, fear, anxiety, depression, worry. We know that, right? When we're all depressed and sad, all we want to do is curl up in a ball with our hoodie on and just, escape from the world, right? As opposed to when we're feeling joy and love and awe, there's this expansiveness to it, and you want to share it with the world and you want to jump for joy and, those kind of things. So that is the energy frequency that is higher, has a higher vibration. And with that, that's where your heart is going to create the smoother kind of energy pulses that come out in a magnetic field around the body, because the heart is the greatest projector of a magnetic field, and it's been measured through magnetometers. It's literally 6 to 9 feet out that we can measure, but it's more than that, right? Just our technology measure it further than that, but we emit this field. It's palpable. And it's shaped like a toroid, like that little, as it goes up, it goes around, it comes in, it goes up, around. And cool. This, within that field is our emotional signatures that we put out, whether it's joy or love, care, versus fear and anger. We'll feel that and we'll sense it. So it changes the quality of the energy that comes out. And within our own systems, it feeds us in and it feeds us out. And so when our brains and our hearts are in the same language conversation, then that's the coherence of it. But just to go a little bit further around that, it's interesting because people say, well, how do I get them to communicate? Because most of the time our brain says one thing and our heart says something else. Because we talk ourselves out of it. Our brains are built in duality, right? We have two hemispheres, left and right, yes and no, pros and cons, and all of these things, and we go back and forth. But the heart itself is just pure unification. It only knows one language, and that language is based upon things like intuition. And your connection to higher sources, the heart knows, follow your heart, like all of those idioms that we have demonstrate that. In ancient indigenous cultures, they were always doing that, tapping into that deeper intuitive state and the wisdom inside the heart. We just have to get our brain to get into that same communication.
And do you find that when the brain is out of sync with the heart, does it make healing more difficult?
Absolutely. It makes it possible or long.
And so do our animals have that same disconnect? I mean, clearly they have emotions. I was just reading something today that somebody posted saying, the behavior problems that we see in the veterinary world when people bring their animals in seem to be getting worse. And I think because there's a lot of discord in the world, in the universe right now, that it is affecting our animals as well. And so this veterinarian was saying, look, I feel like I spend more time trying to get control of the situation and being able to handle the animal to do what I need to do. I spend more time doing that than I actually do, getting my exam or getting my diagnostics. So how is there a way to bring that level of anxiety. First of all, I think a lot of our animals are very frustrated because they don't have a job and they're meant to have a job and they're being
Yeah.
fed incorrectly. Their guts are a mess. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. We take dogs and cats and we put them in our human world and expect them to follow our rules that are totally against what their nature would be. Is there a way to bring them back to that stage of coherence? And do you have any simple tips for people to bring themselves back to that when they've got all this anxiety and fear going on?
Yeah, well, like you've alluded to, it's a big, big, deep, deep conversation with many, many layers. And honestly, it boils down to the human, having that human really level up in their abilities of controlling their emotional landscape, going through the healing processes, allowing that emotional metabolism of traumas, that they've gone throughout their lives to really embrace another level of healing. I mean, I feel like the conversation needs to get real because we see that there is such a mess. Like you said, animals are inherently coherent. But they are a part of nature. They're down, they're dirty, they're in it, they're of that realm. And so naturally, their natural default is to be a part of the coherency of the universe. It's what you said, people have taken them out of their elements, have not allowed them to be the dogs that they are, the breeds that they need to be, finding their purpose and whatnot, giving them processed foods, messing up their microbiome, putting them in artificial situations, neutralizing them, sterilizing them, right? So they can't reproduce. Their whole world is a mess. And then they rely on us and to intercollate with our worlds. And our worlds are a mess. So I like to think about it when a good example, I think, when I was working with the canine police department, and I was talking to the sergeant about how do they decide what dog goes with which officer, and they were really mindful about matching the personalities of the dog with the officer, because if you have a very high-strung Belgian Malinois and you hook them up with a very high-strung person, it doesn't work, right? They need to balance. You need to have a calm officer and a high-strung dog, and that makes it better. And we had conversations about, there were a lot of times where these dogs were inadvertently biting the assailants. They weren't coming when they were called. There was a lot of confusion during the calls that they went on, and they were trying to figure out, like, why is this happening? And it was all about the human, right? So you have this dog he knows what to do. He's trained what to do. He's waiting for the command. He's waiting to go. All he needs to do is for you to tell him to attack, right? And he's waiting for that. And then you have an officer who comes into the situation and they're stressed. He's worried. He's confused. He's not on his game. And the dog is looking to him for a direction. And the officer's like, well, I don't know. Like, this is all subconscious, right. Not standing there looking at his dog saying, I don't know. This right. is all under the radar that the dog is picking up. And then the dog gets all confused and he's like, okay, well, I'm trained, so I'm just going to go bite. And then they run and they bite. And then that could be a problem because he may bite the wrong person or get out of control. So ultimately, that's a good example of how important it is for the human. It's all about human and getting them to be to get more coherence.
Very, very cool. And I think that's a great example. And we are out of time. So for anybody who wants more information on this, Dr. Barrie has a website, drbarriesands.com, and it's Barrie. It'll be in the show notes. And she has a survey that you can take to get a free copy of the top 10 ways to create optimum wellness for you and your pet, which I think would be amazing. And this energy work, we don't think about it often enough because we have such a profound impact when there is stress surrounding us. There is stress surrounding our animals, and it can show up in so many ways. And for those who are dealing with chronic illnesses themselves and chronic illnesses with their pets, I think that getting the emotional component taken care of is so critical to accomplishing healing for either of you. So, Dr. Barrie, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been enlightening. I always enjoy talking to you, and I love hearing about this stuff because it's just so cool, and you explain it in a way that we all get it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thanks for having me, and thanks for that closing statements were amazing.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another great Naturally Healthy Pets episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for some helpful links. And if you enjoy the show, please be sure to follow and listen for free on your favorite podcast app. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you on how we're doing. Visit drjudymorgan.com for healthy product recommendations, comprehensive courses, upcoming events, and other fantastic resources. Until next time, keep giving your pet the vibrant life they deserve.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. It is no substitute for professional care by a veterinarian, licensed nutritionist, or other qualified professional. You're encouraged to do your own research and should not rely on this information as professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Dr. Judy and her guests express their own views, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets neither endorses or opposes any particular view discussed here.